The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Tasty Minstrel Games, Arcane Wonders, Game Toppers, Patience, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the gateway city, St. Louis, Missouri, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review CMON Games Rising Sun. They'll also take a look back at the Dukes review of the Colonists and Rum Bones' Second Tide in a Dukes quadruple take. And then they'll start sculpting their board gaming Mount Rushmore. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And wait, what's my name again?
It's Alex. It's Alex.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that one. Alex.
I guess Alex is having a little bit of a hard time remembering since it's been a while. But welcome back to episode 172, which we're calling the Settlers of Japan. Settlers of Japan. Naming thanks to Ziggy over on our Board Game Geek Guild. That's guild number 2008. Every episode we get some help from the guild to name our episodes and our Dukes on deck. And this one makes perfect sense because we're talking about Rising Sun, so Japanese-themed game. And then Settlers references the Colonists. I think it works on a couple different levels there. So great job, Ziggy. At the end of the episode, we'll give you our runners-up for the rest of the episode titles. So, Alex, welcome back. It's been quite a while since we recorded. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. It kind of feels like I'm coming back from the trip, sort of like when I took that big long trip. I feel off my game, especially coming back with this episode, Sean. This is a doozy. This is a doozy for me. We're gonna have some fun here.
Yeah, I think so. This should be a fun episode with our featured review. So, should just point out, obviously we have been off the air for quite a while now. So, for those of you that know, we posted on Twitter, we posted in the guild that this episode, I guess, was going to be delayed. Very, very sadly, very suddenly, very unexpectedly, Raquel, my fiance, her mother Carmen passed away, and we've just been dealing with the fallout from that. So it's been a difficult time for Raquel, for Mariah, for Chewy, for the family, and I am just trying to do the best I can to be there for them as much as possible. And so we really do appreciate the patience of our amazing listeners, and people on Twitter and on Facebook, and the guild have said a lot of really loving, helpful things, and I've shared that with Raquel and the family. And I really appreciate it. It's really great to see the community come together and support my family. I love that. I think that's fantastic, and I really appreciate it. And we'll get through this. That's what it is. So thank you to everyone, and continue to send your thoughts, your prayers to Raquel and to the rest of the family. We've really appreciated that. So, but I'm glad to be back, and hope you're happy to have me back, Alex.
I'm happy to have you back, of course, man. Come on now. Always. I mean, look, it was my highest self-esteem I've had in weeks. Just, I was floating on cloud nine, and if anyone to take me down a peg, it was great. Yeah, I was living my best life, but no, I needed to be put back in my place, Sean. So I'm happy to have you back.
All right. Well, I'll see if I can oblige you, Alex. So then, of course, the other thing we want to mention is that while we were off, the Golden Geek Awards for 2017 did get announced. And, of course, we were nominated as one of the best board game podcasts 2017. Again, thank you to our amazing listeners for making that happen. Sadly, we were not the winner, nor were we one of the two runners-up, but that's okay. But congratulations to the winner. Rado Talks Through. Runners-up were Ludology and Heavy Cardboard. 3 fantastic podcasts, so congrats to them. One of these days, Alex, we'll get there.
Yeah, we just need every other one who's nominated currently to win, and then it'll be our turn.
Yes.
We're playing the long game. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. But once again, thank you for everyone who voted for us. We really do, again, appreciate the support. And so Alex, because it's been a while, what's new with you? Let the listeners know what's been going on.
I got a girlfriend now.
Oh.
Her name's Abby, and she, just as a quick story, she recently this past weekend outwitted me in a game of Fog of Love, her first one.
Ooh.
I was going for unconditional love. in Fog of Love. My character was trying to pump up her hearts, and we had one move towards the end of the game where her hearts got really well pumped up. Her satisfaction in the relationship was high enough, like, oh, I could pull this off. We could do this. She just has to hit all her trait goals. And secretly, she was going for Heartbreaker. Not Heartbreaker, Honorable Exit. Which required all of the trait goals to be opposite to what her traits actually were. And it is one of the most satisfying losses I've ever had in a board game, was losing in that fashion, because I was super stoked that she beat me that way. It was so cool. Anyway, that's Abby. Abby's awesome.
Well, very cool. Let me point out also that I also managed to get in another play of Fog of Love a couple weeks ago.
Oh.
Yeah, so one of the things I said in our review from last episode, right? Yeah, I guess it was last episode, was that I really wanted to play this with Raquel. I didn't have an opportunity to do that before the review, but we did get to play it. I wanted to report back on how that was, and we had a good time. We had a great time. She really enjoyed the game. She's eager to play through some of the other scenarios, so that conditional for might be looking a little bit steadier.
I'm happy to hear it. I'm happy to hear that you're putting in hard work in your relationship with this game. And it's paying off. It's paying dividends. I'm glad to hear it.
Happy to help, Alex. Happy to help. So, Alex, let us know what else besides Fog of Love have you been playing recently?
So, I think because I knew I wasn't sure when we were going to record the next episode, and I'd already played enough of Rising Sun to know a pretty firm opinion on that game. I was pretty free up to play a lot of old favorites. So, Flip Ships has come out a ton. Played Downforce just the other night at Jamie Stegmeier's game night. But another thing that's been going on behind the scenes that I hadn't been talking about on the show, but I can talk about now, is I've been helping out a lot with Football Highlights 2053. I've been playing a good amount of this. For folks who don't know, this is the spiritual sequel to Baseball Highlights 2045 First Mention. The Mike Fitzgerald designed amazing cyborg baseball game, my favorite game of all time. And I am helping with development of this game, which is a kind of surreal experience for me, Sean. I'm helping play test and provide suggestions and playing through it. And it's really interesting to see this game from this point and sort of be there as it evolves and grows and turns into what hopefully someday will be another amazing title. I'm excited to be a part of the process, and it's really interesting and cool. But I've been working on that and been getting in decent plays with a bunch of different people, and it's been cool to be in a position to give feedback on something like that. It's really, it's surreal. That's the only word I can come up with. It's surreal in a cool way. I don't want to talk too much about gameplay and thoughts on that right now, just because the game has changed so dramatically already since when I first started playtesting it to where it is now. But obviously there's some excitement there for me, and I'm also excited to hopefully help it get into an awesome place. So can't say much more other than that, but that is one of the things I've been working on and playing, and probably going to talk about it more in the coming weeks.
Okay, very cool. Well, I want to talk about a game I got from Capstone Games. This is one of your favorite publishers, Alex. And Capstone, they've been supporters of the show, and I'm a huge fan of Capstone Games. They've been bringing over some heavier games like Arkwright and Hoshable Connect. Really happy with everything that they've been putting out. And so Clay reached out and said, hey, do you want a copy of Wildcatters? So yeah, I said, sure, I'd love to see this. And it came in a couple weeks ago, and of course, had difficulty getting it to the table anytime soon. But I did manage to get to play with it the other night, and it is really cool. So Wildcatters is a game where you are running an oil company. Back when you're first kind of discovering oil in the 19th century, 18th century. My history on that's a little, I think it's 19th century. Yeah. Anyway, you're running these different companies, and you are trying to set up infrastructure around the world so that you can pump oil and ship it off and send it to different destinations, different continents. Basically, it's kind of an area majority game, because the more you're able to sell in, say, Australia, you're going to get a certain number of points at the end of the game if you have the most sold in Australia. And then that's going to be true for all the different continents. So you're trying to ship oil all over the world, although there is only certain regions that will produce oil: North America, South America, Asia, like Southern Asia, and then Russia. And so the way the game works is on your turn, you're going to select from I think it's 7 or 8 cards. And that card is going to tell you 2 things. Number one, it's going to tell you which section of the board you're going to be able to operate for that turn. and it's going to give you some sort of bonus. Maybe it's points or maybe it's resources of some kind or another. And so you'll pick that, you'll get the bonus, and then you'll get to work in that region. And all the oil producing regions are divided into two halves. So really 8 different regions that you're playing in, but you have, this will tell you either, West Russia or East Russia. And when you're there, you can do a couple different things. You can build railroad networks. You can build oil drills, oil derricks, which can then become these pump jacks. And you're trying to extract the oil and then ship it off, like I said, to different areas of the board. Now, it's interesting how you do this because there are 2 main currencies. There are workers, and I don't mean that in a worker placement sense. It's just it's a currency, basically. And you have these worker cards, and certain actions require a certain number of workers. You also have shares in your company and shares in the other companies. And there's some limitations on what you can do with yours, which actions require some of your shares and whatnot. But these are sort of an additional cost to doing certain things. And you can also turn in shares for extra workers. But ultimately, so it's a game about kind of managing these 2 resources. And for the most part, you're only getting a certain number of workers each turn. You're not generally getting shares as income unless you do a couple things. Generally, you're getting extra shares by selling off oil from one of your refineries. But when you sell that oil, it may not be your oil. It may be oil that other people have placed there. And whenever they place it there, you have to give them some of your shares because you're basically kind of buying the oil from them. Although when you ship off everything in your refinery, they get the credit for that kind of area majority thing, but then you get paid for it. It's kind of confusing, but it makes more sense once you see it all laid out in front of you because there's kind of this like following aspect to it. So if I'm operating over here in Western Russia, I decide to build this train, to build this sea shipper, what's it called? A boat. I build a boat, a tanker, oil tanker, there we go. And then when we reach a certain threshold, when we have enough oil derricks in a given region, we're able to then basically find the oil and then we can start converting things to pump jacks. So I have to pay a certain cost in workers to make that happen initially. And then other players can kind of follow that action on my turn to do the same. And then we could send the oil that we've collected out along the different networks that we've created. And there's a choice as far as where you want to send it. Maybe you send it to an oil tanker that's going to sail off to a different port, or maybe you send it along the railroad to a nearby refinery. Lots of different options there. And so that's going to continue. Everyone's going to go around and you're making these decisions. Where am I shipping this oil? I'm really ahead here in Australia, but I'm behind over here in North America. So I need to make sure I ship it over there, but I don't really have the means to do that, or I'm going to have to pay shares to do it or whatever. Really interesting decisions. I played this with our buddies Rory, Max, and Matt, and we were all pretty into this game. In fact, we've been talking about it quite a bit the days since online, and it was really good. The mechanics are, I think, fairly simple, but it's a lot of really interesting decisions and pretty difficult. So we're going to get this back to the table pretty soon. I think Wildcatters is really solid. So I would definitely look into this if that sounds interesting. If you like, I would say light route building. It's not like a heavy route building game, but there's definitely the logistics of the production and getting it where you need to get. So definitely take a look at Wildcatters from Capstone Games. So definitely take a look at Capstone Games if you're more of a Sean and less of an Alex, because Alex is out there won't be super crazy about this game.
Great. Excellent.
Probably.
Wonderful. Very good. Well, you enjoyed that. You enjoyed that, Sean.
Oh, I will.
I'm going to talk about something I enjoyed that I played about a week or so ago, and that is a little-known game, Dinosaur Island. Dinosaur Island from Pandasaurus. Sean, have you played this one yet?
I have not, sadly. I really want to play this. I know there's a couple copies floating around nearby. I'll get to the table soon.
So I played the copy of my work buddy Tyler's copy, and he is obsessed with Jurassic Park. So this game is right in his wheelhouse. And in this game, it's basically you're building Jurassic Park. You are building a dinosaur theme park for folks to come and check out the dinos and give you money for it. So that's really cool thematically. And this game embodies it quite well. The game's played in 4 phases. Each round is anyway. Turn Ugh. See, I feel so lost, Sean. It's been so long. I don't know how to talk about board games anymore. In phase 1, you are researching DNA and ultimately either improving your cold storage so you can store more kinds of DNA, or grabbing the rights to kind of dinosaur genome mapping. So you have the map to build, say, a Triceratops or a T-Rex or a Brontosaurus. So that's a big key part to this. Then step 2, you can get stuff. You can get gift shops for your theme park, or you can get access to, you can trade in dollars for DNA that you might need, or you can get specialists. So you can get a hunter who improves your park security so that the dinos have less of a chance of breaking out and eating guests. You might get like a chaos theory scientist who gives you a roll of the dice to get certain benefits. That's phase 2. Phase 3, you're executing with a little worker placement, but done kind of simultaneously. So you're assigning workers to different places, building dinos, upgrading your park, increasing your security, doing what you need to do to have the most successful theme park. And then 4, you're drawing visitors out of a bag. They come enjoy your park, hopefully, paying money for it, hopefully, and leave happy and hopefully alive. In a lot of cases, they don't pay because you might draw hooligans from the bag who take up space in your park but don't give you anything for it. They sneak in and they don't get eaten by dinos. Or you might draw paying customers, but your security is so low that your T-Rex breaks out of its cage and eats 2 of the guests, which is no bueno. Not so good. So that's the gist of Dinosaur Island, and it's a game that has a lot of thematic promise, and for the most part, I think it really delivers on it. This is a game that I think a lot of folks will dig. I think it's in that perfect intersection, Sean, of your and I's tastes, in that it's got enough going on, enough complexity, enough strategy to it that I think you're going to have enough meat on the bones. And for me, because it's so thematic and lives up to that theme so well, it feels connected enough that the setup time, and not that it's that complex of a game, but some of the complexity of it doesn't bother me at all. So I'm excited about this one. Clearly, the board game community is excited about this one because the expansion is live on Kickstarter right now, and as of the time of this recording, has just cracked $1 million. $1 million, Sean. This thing is a huge hit, and I'm excited for you to try this. Does any of that... I don't know to what extent you've kind of heard of the mechanics of this one, Sean, but does this one sound intriguing? Are you a big Jurassic Park person?
Yeah, no, I like Jurassic Park. I mean, saw it when it came out in theaters, but yeah, no, this definitely sounds pretty interesting. Like I said, I'm eager to get to the table as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear what you think about it because, like I said, I think it's a pretty good intersection between the two of us, and I think there's a reason it's had the success it's had. So, good job, folks over at Pandasaurus. You have a big time hit on your hands. Killer job. Good job. Anyway, what else have you been playing, Sean?
So, speaking of other companies sending us games, our friends over at North Star Games, they make games like Say Anything and Happy Salmon. They sent us, they sent me copies of Funky Chicken and Monster Match, which is part of their new Happy Planet line of kind of lighter party games that kind of have a physical component too, I guess, to them. So, Alex, they actually sent you a copy as well, or a copy of each of these games, but unfortunately it was stolen, right?
Yeah, stolen, or the packaging was really weak or something, but I got the envelope and the pamphlet, like the little North Star promotional pamphlet, and the games themselves were not to be found.
Oh, man, what a bummer. But I'm sure if you reach out to Bruce, he'll from North Star, I'm sure he'll hook you up, Alex.
Yep, and I just got those fairly recently, like, I think a week or so ago. So I do have those replacements, and yeah, good on Bruce. Bruce is a good dude. Thanks for getting him to me. I had him send him to my work because this is not the first time I've had a board game. I think there's some sort of board game fan in my building besides me, because my expansions for Baseball Highlights 2045, second mention, didn't make it to me. Just straight up didn't make it here. The package was listed as signed for at the building. The person remembers putting the package in the package room, and it was gone by the time I went to check. So I've had some bad board game luck in this apartment building, Sean.
Oh, man, it sounds like someone is out to get the Dukes, because I had a Kickstarter game that actually got stolen from me a couple weeks ago, and I have the aftermath on my front door camera. So there's a plot to to hit the Duke, so to speak.
We'll get to the bottom of it. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about both these games. First, let's start with Funky Chicken, which I guess you could say is the spiritual successor to Happy Salmon.
Yep.
Isn't that a weird thing to say?
I think it's not necessarily that that's weird. I think what's weird is that it's something you'd be excited about.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, Happy Salmon has been a game that we've had a lot of fun with. It is just silly, stupid fun. And it's great at conventions. It's kind of hard to play at Empire, unfortunately, but at cons, it's a great con game. Alex, you have dubbed it Gamer Viagra, mostly from an incident where I was at a con. I think it was like one of the last nights of Dice Tower Con. I was just dragging. I had a game of Dune to play, and I was just exhausted. And we played this, and it re-energized me, and I was ready to go. So it's been dubbed Gamer Viagra. So Happy Salmon and then Funky Chicken are relatively simple games. Everybody gets their own deck of cards. The deck of cards are the same for everyone. And there are certain actions on these cards. So what you'll do is everyone at the same time will flip a card over from their deck, and there's an action that they're going to mime and or say, depending on which rules you're using at the time. And you're looking for someone that has that matching action. So, for example, in Funky Chicken, you have to do the Funky Chicken, where you make little wings from your elbows and you flap them. And so if someone else does it, you make eye contact, and then you throw the card down, and then you go on to the next card that you have. So there's there's a swing, which is kind of like do-si-do. You have to find someone. You may have to go around the table that you're at and lock arms with someone and then swing around. There's bump, where you have to hip bump each other, which is pretty crazy. And so you're just trying to race through your cards as quickly as possible. And whoever gets rid of their last card first is the winner of the silly, stupid game that is so much fun. It's fantastic. And if you want to get extra crazy, you could even take a deck, because it has matching color backs to the first edition of Happy Salmon, or the main edition, whatever. And you can mix Funky Chicken and Happy Salmon and have all of these crazy actions that you're doing in one game.
A bunch of crazy. It's and I read through the rule books of both of these games, and that part struck me as insanity, absolute insanity. By the way, I do love how when you're doing the Funky Chicken in Funky Chicken, you're supposed to go so funky. Did you follow this rule, Sean?
Oh no, I don't think we did actually. I might have missed that.
Oh, then you all lost. No one won.
Ah, my bad. So that's Funky Chicken, part of the new Happy Planet series from North Star Games. So the second one they sent me is called Monster Match. That's Match, M-A-T-C-H, not to be confused with the Monster Mash, noted Halloween novelty song. So the Monster Match is a game. It's kind of like a speed recognition game where you're trying to slap cards or something on the table, kind of like Ghost Blitz, or what's that one you and I played at Gen Con?
Cobra Paw.
Yes, Cobra Paw, right. So in this game, you have this deck of cards, and it has all these different monsters. And these monsters have, they're really cutesy, by the way. The art is fantastic. It's this cutesy little art. And these monsters have different numbers of legs, arms, and eyes. And you're going to pass these two dice around. One of them has a number from 0 to 5. So, 6-sided die. The other one has either an eyeball, an arm, or a leg. So you roll them, and it's a certain number of eyes, arms, or legs, and that's what you're trying to find. So let's say I roll 3 legs. Of all the monsters that are face up, and I think it starts with 10, you're trying to find one that has the right number of that body part. You slap your hands on it. If you get there first, it's yours. And there are multiples of them potentially that are laid out there. If there's no matching ones at all, then you deal out some new ones, and you re-roll, and you keep going. Now, each of these cards have a certain number of donuts. I think it's 1 to 3. And at the end of the game, you're going to add up all the donuts on the monsters that you've collected. That's pretty much it. It's a pretty simple, pretty straightforward game, but I think it's pretty fun, especially if you're playing with some younger players. So I played with Mariah, who is not one of those younger players. She's 16. But I also play with Chewy, who is going to be 4.
Man, that's so weird to think about.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Now, this was probably a little bit ahead of Chewy. I mean, she's not quite there, and we kind of have to take our time and be like, oh, 3 eyes. Do you see anything with 3 eyes? And Mariah's ready to go for it. I'm like, yeah, just let Chewy have a chance here. But I think this is something that she would definitely, I mean, she's actually asked to play this a couple times since the first night that we played it. So she enjoyed it. And I think if you have slightly older gamers too, maybe 5, 6 and even older, I think it's a pretty fun version of, that kind of speed recognition, trying to snatch something from the other players. So hopefully, Alex, we'll have a chance to play both of these games together at a convention at some point in the near future.
Whenever that is. It's a mystery, Sean.
So that's Happy Planet Games, their new Monster Match, and Funky Chicken.
All right, first up in news, some news that fellow St. Louis board game company Stonemaier Games dropped on everyone pretty recently, and that's that we have a new Viticulture expansion coming down the pipe. Rhine Valley. I think it's visitors from the Rhine Valley, something along those lines?
Correct. Yes. So yeah, this is just a small expansion. Basically, it's a whole new set of visitor cards that's going to replace the standard visitor cards from the base game of Viticulture. So you won't use the base visitor cards at all. Of course, Viticulture, for those that don't know, this is a fantastic, I think we'd probably say, or at least I would say, medium weight worker placement game. It is actually a Boxcars award winner. Both of us have given it a 6. I think it's just fantastic. And I know you do too, Alex. And so the visitors are kind of these cool special actions that are random, right? Because you're drawing these cards and they have special actions that are usually more efficient than just a standard worker placement action. So there's a little bit of luck involved here, but you can kind of play around that as well. And so this is just offering just a new way to play, to add some variability to the game. Maybe you've played the base game a bunch of times and you're familiar with most of the visitor cards. Well, this might spice it up a little bit. So definitely sounds interesting. I'll pick this up. I'm eager to play this.
Yeah, one of the interesting things, and to be clear, I don't get much of a scoop on things, despite being in Jamie's game group. I maybe just. My journalistic abilities have withered and faded, as I've now haven't been a TV reporter, Sean, and this is also crazy, in more than a year and closing in on a year and a half. So it's been a chunk of time. So those skills have withered and faded away. But what I did hear that I thought was interesting is Stonemaier has something called the Champion Program, which basically, if you sign up a subscription, a small amount in a subscription, you will get free shipping, pre-order discount, and you'll get the game first. So that's something that he has launched fairly recently, the Stonemaier Champion Program. And it's always interesting to see what Jamie does, because he has such a cool mind when it comes to games, and is pretty fan-oriented. I think he knows, and I tell him this to his face, that I think the world of what he does over at Stonemaier. And this should be pretty cool, too. Viticulture itself is, this is a game that is a Boxcars award winner for good reason, and I haven't played it in way too long. You know what's funny, Sean? And maybe not surprising knowing Jamie. I haven't played any of Jamie's games with Jamie. I haven't played Between Two Cities, I haven't played Scythe, and I haven't played Viticulture, and I feel like I should. I feel like that's something I need to do.
I think you're just avoiding playing Scythe, so there's no chance that you will end your winning streak.
It's still going, Sean. It can't end if I don't play again. Which I want to play again, because I like Scythe so much. It's rough. Anyway, that's a whole big side tangent. Hey, Visit from the Rhine Valley. Check it out. It's coming out June 1st. Next up, we're talking about a couple of Kickstarters. First one we'll talk about is one that has been top of the BGG hotness for at least the past week, if not longer. It's Imperious from Kolossal Games, designed by Grant Rodiek. And Sean, if I'm not mistaken, part of the reason there's so much excitement for this one is there's a Dune connection to this. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about this one, Sean, as much as you know about it.
Well, actually, Alex, I have a prototype copy of the game.
What?
Yeah, I actually reached out to Grant Rodiek, the designer, and asked if he would have Kolossal send me a copy. So I actually remember for a while kind of watching Grant work through the design process of this game, because when he initially was putting up on Twitter, and I think there was a design diary on BGG. I'm not sure about that. But he was saying, hey, I'm developing this Dune game. I know that if it ever gets published, it's not going to be Dune, but Dune is a heavy inspiration. So of course, being a huge Dune fan, I'm paying attention to this because even if the theme is kind of coming through, it's definitely something I'd be interested in. My Dune bona fides, so to speak, I have a Dune tattoo, Alex, and I think you knew that. I think I've told our listeners that before. It's a House Treaties crest because I love Dune so much. I've read the original 6 books a million times, actually probably about 12. But yeah, so, and I was very happy when you read at least the first book, and you seemed to enjoy it quite a bit.
I did, and I would be interested in reading other ones. By the way, I think it's also notable that this is one of the only series in which you cheer for the actual protagonists.
Very true. Yes, that is very true. Go figure. All right, so let's talk about Imperious. Now, again, this is inspired by Dune, which is 1965 novel by Frank Herbert, and it's in the far, far distant future where there is this galaxy-spanning empire that is basically run on this spice melange, which has properties that can keep people younger. It also has some properties that kind of allow people to see through time, to navigate and just find safe paths to go from one system to another by folding space. Anyway, this isn't a Dune game, heavily inspired by it, but let's talk about the game itself. It's actually a drafting game with some tactical card play, along with some hidden information, and a little bit of intrigue for spice. Hey, get it? Spice? Dune? Haha. So it plays 2 to 4 players, and every player has a faction, and they have their faction cards. There are 6 cards. There's a commander, a noble, an ambassador, an elder, a royal guard, and an assassin. But you're not keeping your cards. You're taking all of your faction cards, plus some random event cards, and shuffling them all together so that we have a deck of cards that's all the different factions, for one for each player, and we're going to be dealing out a hand of cards and then drafting a card at a time. So you can draft one of your faction cards or an opponent's faction cards, or you can draft an event card, whatever. Because once you have this hand of cards, you're then going to take turns playing one card at a time to these planets that are out on the board. And I believe it's the number of players plus 1, I think. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to score points depending on what cards that you're playing. So like, for example, the commander, if the commander's at a planet, if you have the highest strength of the planet, because there are 2 numbers on each card, it's strength or influence, favor. Is it favor? I think it's favor. So 2 different things. One's kind of like military power and one is kind of political power, right? So if the planet where your commander is, whether I've placed my commander or someone else has placed my commander, if I happen to have the most strength there, then I'm going to score some points based on what the card says, and I'm going to put a control token on that planet, which will potentially give me points at the end of the game if I have the most control tokens on that planet. Plus, more control tokens I get out, I get extra points too. So that's one thing that one of the cards do, the commander. There is the assassin, which if you have your assassin on a world, you're going to be able to assassinate a noble of another player's. And then some of the other cards are keying off that influence or favor that we talked about. And so you're playing these cards down, and some of them you're able to play face down. You can have 2 face down cards per world. There's a certain limited number of cards you can play on each world, but we're taking turns one at a time playing these cards. And then once all the cards are played out, we resolve the plans from left to right. The cards have a certain initiative value, so we line them up, and then we kind of go down the line and have them resolve their effects, score points. Basically, the game's going to end when someone reaches 20, and then at the end of the round, whoever has the most points is the winner from some of the end game scoring points. So yeah, it was pretty interesting. And I think some of the Dune flavor definitely came through. It was a pretty interesting drafting game. I love drafting games, and it's an interesting decision. Am I going to draft this card that's a faction of mine because I really want to have control over where my commander goes? Or, oh man, I want to take this person's assassin because I want to make sure that my noble's going to be able to do his thing wherever he winds up. So interesting choice there. And then I like tactical card play as well. So this was definitely pretty interesting. I think you would like this. What do you think, Alex? How's that sound to you?
So yeah, I'd definitely be willing to give it a try. I liked reading Dune a lot. It's not the kind of a theme that immediately I'm going to be like, oh, I'm all about this. But no, I think it's certainly worth checking out. So, and Kolossal Games in general has been an up and comer. They recently had Kami-sama, which was a success on Kickstarter, and this I expect will do pretty well. It's already made at the time of this recording about $35,000, right in that range. So, Sean, have you backed this one? Are you going to back this one?
I have not backed it yet. I probably will. So let's talk about the different options. You can pledge $24. Plus, if you're here in the US, it's $6 shipping. That's going to get you the base game and then the Enmity expansion. Or $33 plus the shipping gets you the base game, that first expansion, and then the Empire of the Dawn expansion. One thing I didn't talk about is the Elder cards. There are kind of vanilla Elders. Everyone can just have just an Elder that just has some sort of stats on it. But then you can swap out, depending on how if you want a more advanced game, you could swap out Elders that have unique powers. So some of these expansions are adding in new event cards and then new Elders that you could swap out. So really you're getting, I think, a decent amount of variability with these expansions, but there's also a decent amount of variability just in the base game as well, because again, there are, I think it was 2 sets of Elders per faction, and then there's different worlds which have some special abilities and different event cards that you're not seeing all of in a single game. So even the base game has a pretty decent amount of variability, and I think the expansions will definitely help with that. So at the time of recording, this has raised $34,000, and you're going to need to hurry up and jump on this if this sounds interesting to you, because this is going to end on April 15th, and we're expecting a Kickstarter delivery sometime around September of 2018. So that is Imperious, currently on Kickstarter.
Next up in Kickstarter, we had to talk about it. And it's lucky that we were able to, as we'll explain in a second. But we're talking about Mottainai Wutai Mountain. And this is the expansion to one of the Duke's favorite games of all time. Each of our favorite games of all time. Clear Boxcars winner. Amazing title. Designed by Carl Chuddick, who most people know for Glory to Rome. Published by Asmodee Games. Sean, what does this expansion do?
Well, Wutai Mountain is adding 54 new cards that you'll shuffle into a deck of Mottainai. And the cards are all of these Ohm works. I believe it's just spelled O-M. These Ohm works are pretty interesting because they let you tuck cards under them. So very briefly, let me explain Mottainai. Mottainai is this game with multi-use cards, and you have a player mat in front of you. And based on the type of actions that you're taking, and you take actions either by tucking a certain type of card, which will enable certain actions, or by following the actions that other players have tucked in their task section, which is the top part of the card, you're then able to tuck some cards on the left, which are your helpers, which might give you extra actions of certain types. You'll be able to tuck things at the bottom of your mat, which is your craft bench, which is going to let you build some of these cards into works that will go on your left or your right wing of your mat, or they'll go on the right side of the card, tuck it there. Those are your sails, which are potentially worth some points at the end of the game. Mottainai is a pretty difficult game to teach someone to play, pretty difficult to conceptualize without saying it, but it's well worth the effort. And as we've stated multiple times, this is, one of our favorite games, Alex. This is a game that I think is pretty much the highest rated shared game between the two of us. It's your number 2, my number 3 game of all time as of our list last August. So the Ohm cards, which is what this new expansion is adding in, are these works that once you complete them, so not tucking them, but you're adding them to your wing, to one of your wings, they can also have cards tucked under them. So some of them might, for example, say, depending on how many helpers you have tucked under this card, take this effect or this effect. Sounds really interesting. Sounds really cool. Now, something that both of us really like about this game is there's this certain simplicity. It may not seem like it because the rules come across as kind of complex, but there's this elegance to this game. And I wonder if this is adding too much. I don't know. I haven't played this, but I'm certainly willing to try it. I mean, I love this game. I'm able to play it quickly enough. This sounds interesting. I'm certainly willing to back this. I have backed this, and I will give it a try. What about you?
I mean, I have to give this a try, right? It's a top 2 game of all time. It's my number 2 game. I will say, having not played the expansion yet, I am nervous for it, if that makes any amount of sense. because part of what I love about the original is how much there is there. I mean, very rarely, if ever, have I seen two games be won in the same way. There's just so much possibility in that space. It's such a brilliant design. It's such an elegant design in many ways, despite the fact that it's a hard teach. It's such a beautiful game that I worry about an expansion detracting from that, but I am certainly willing to give it a try. Certainly have the benefit of the doubt here. I'm also grateful, Sean, that we have a chance to talk about this because they initially had this Kickstarter campaign, or wanted to have it be a waste nothing campaign, a 5-day long campaign. And then accidentally, and this happened at Grey Fox before I got there. Oh no, dang it. Monochromatic Wolf, before I got there, missetting the campaign dates. Now, in the case of Monochromatic Wolf, they canceled that campaign for Deception Undercover Allies. Oh, dang it. Deception... Wait, nope. I forgot the alternate name for that one. Anyway, that game, and then relaunched it. In the case of Mottainai Wutai Mountain, they're letting it ride. But they expect that this will be a pretty fast fulfillment after the campaign wraps up. My guess is it's already printed. So
yeah, I think so. And just remind me, Alex, you didn't originally back this on Kickstarter, right?
The original one?
Yeah.
No. I didn't play this until after it was out, and had one of the most satisfying, like if I had to come up with a list of all-time losses in a game, this loss was so satisfying to me. It's part of what had me fall in love with the game.
Oh yeah, with Eugene.
I think it was Eugene's copy. Yeah. I did not back the original Kickstarter.
So if you want to go ahead and back Wutai Mountain, you can back it at the $12 level, which will get you a copy of the expansion, or you can back it for $24, which will give you the expansion plus a single deck of Mottainai. So look into that. It's met its goal, $18,000 of a $2,000 goal, and this is ending April 16th. So once again, make a move on this if that sounds interesting to you. And yeah, like you said, we're expecting that May 2018 delivery here pretty quickly.
But hey, we're running a contest.
Yes, we sure are, Alex. So listener Tom, he's at TPCHID on Twitter. A couple weeks ago, we were promoting the launch of this Kickstarter on Twitter because we're obviously big fans of it, and both he and Patrick Hillier were kind of giving us guff because I had said that this is better than Glory to Rome, and I'm sure that's a minority opinion, but hey, that's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. So just some friendly ribbing, and Tom said, "Hey, I've got a copy in shrink. I can't give it away." So he said, "Hey, how about we try giving it away on the show?" So that's what we're going to do. So thank you very much, Tom, for providing that to one of our awesome listeners. So we're going to run a contest, and it's just going to be a pretty straightforward, simple contest. I'm going to put up something on Twitter, put up something on Facebook, and then the Guild. Basically, make a comment in the Guild, make a comment, and then share on Facebook. Make a respond and retweet on Twitter. Each one of those will give you an entry, and then we'll do a random drawing to see who gets this unopened in shrink copy of Mottainai, courtesy Tom. And we'll go ahead and end it April 16th, we'll say by 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time. That's the day that the Kickstarter ends. So pretty quick turnaround here, so make sure you jump on that as soon as possible for a ducal favorite, Mottainai.
Cool. Why not? Well, that is Mottainai Wutai Mountain, and that is your look at the news.
So, Alex, you finally settled in there in St. Louis. What do you have to game on at your place?
It's a wooden table for my parents.
All right, well, that sounds perfect, because did you know that's a gaming table, Alex?
Is it really?
Well, it is. Along with the help of a game topper, you can upgrade your gaming experience. It lets you turn a kitchen table or a dining room table like that into a premium quality thematic portable gaming solution with amazing gaming accessories that enhance the gaming experience. This was a smash success on Kickstarter, and if you're wondering, well, how do I get involved now? That's okay, because you can go to GameToppersLLC.com, and there are still ways to pre-order this. There's links there on the website that you can go ahead and follow, and there's a lot of different tables to fit your particular budget, different sizes, different finishes, a whole bunch of different gaming mats that you can use to really customize your gaming experience. What do you think, Alex? Should we get you set up?
I think that'd be nice. I'd like to game more here. And I'd also like to have this table for eating, because this is my only table. That's Game Toppers at GameToppersLLC.com. Game Toppers, upgrading your gaming experience.
Well, I'll be honest with everyone out there. I'm a little sad to see the Dukes of Dice going from a weekly podcast to a bi-weekly podcast. But that's okay, because there are a lot of amazing other board gaming podcasts. And with all the free time you now have not listening to a Dukes of Dice every single week, maybe you should check out the Tasty Minstrel Games podcast. The TMG podcast is hosted by the undead Viking himself, Lance Mixter. It comes out about every week and it packs quite a punch for a 30-minute podcast. So nice, short, to the point. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes discussion from Lance, from Michael Mendez, the CEO of Tasty Minstrel Games. They bring on a bunch of industry insiders. It's a great peek behind the curtain, so to speak, into the board gaming industry. Lots of cool stuff here. A fantastic inside board gaming podcast. So you can find that where all great podcasts are found, iTunes, Stitcher, that whole deal. Also, be sure to check out all of Tasty Minstrel's amazing games over at playtmg.com. Playtmg.com has all the information you need to find some amazing board games. So be sure to check out playtmg.com and the TMG podcast. So we're fortunate enough to be sponsored by Arcane Wonders, and Arcane Wonders has an impressive line of games. Not only are they the home to the Dice Tower's Essential line, but they have other fantastic games like Spoils of War, Mage Wars Academy, and Mage Wars Arena. Now, of course, they're also the home of the Dice Tower Essentials line, a line of games handpicked by Tom Vassell as essential games that every gamer should own. They started it off with the amazing Sheriff of Nottingham, plus they have the Merry Men expansion for that as well. They followed that up with games like Royals, Onitama, Speechless, and Viral. Arcane Wonders has a game for every type of gamer out there. Be sure to check out all their awesome titles over at arcanewonders.com.
This week, we are talking about a game that was incredibly popular, not just on Kickstarter, but since it's come out. It's an Eric Lang design. It's from CMON. It seems to have everything. But did it win my love? That's what's really important, right? We're talking Rising Sun.
So Rising Sun is the new hotness from CMON Games with a bunch of miniatures, dudes on a map, and designed by Eric Lang, and you know that this is going to be one of Alex's hottest games of 2018. So in Rising Sun, you're trying to gain the most glory at the end of 3 seasons, the spring, summer, and fall. And you're going to do this by trying to control different areas of Japan and basically winning battles there with some of your bushi and some monsters and other cool stuff that you're going to be acquiring throughout the game. So each round, there are 3 main phases. There's the tea ceremony, there's the politics phase, and then the military phase. And in the tea ceremony, you're going to be creating alliances. Basically, you're going to have some open discussion. There might be some wheeling and dealing. Some promises might be made. Some money might be changing hands. And you're going to have an ally probably for that round. Now, it's interesting depending on the player count. If it's an odd number, one person's going to get left out usually. And there are ways that you can betray your ally in the given round. But generally, having an ally can be good because it's going to give you some extra benefits during the politics phase. And it's also going to prevent battles or basically losing troops during the military phase if it's just you and your ally in a single territory. After the tea ceremony, you have the politics phase. Now, in the politics phase, there's going to be 7 actions carried out, and who chooses the action is going to be rotating. But everyone's going to get to participate in that chosen action. So beginning with the first player, they're going to take a stack of cards, which has, there are 10 different cards, and there are 2 actions of each of the 5 types of actions. They're going to draw 4, and from those, pick one that they're going to use that round and put the rest back, and then everyone carries out that action, and then you'll continue selecting actions. So let's talk about these different actions. There is recruit, there is marshal, there is train, there is harvest, and there is betray. So If I select the recruit action, it's going to let me put extra figures of mine, extra models, out onto the board. I'm able to put out a certain number equal to my strongholds onto the boards where I have strongholds. Or if I don't want to put out a Bushi onto the board, I can put a Shinto out to one of the temples on the top of the board where the different kami are worshipped, which can give me some different benefits, which I'm not going to go too much into that during this rules overview. However, if I'm the player that selected the recruit and I have an ally, both of us are going to get to recruit one extra figure. Everyone else, though, only gets to recruit the base number they have for their strongholds. And it's kind of interesting because if I pick recruit, it's actually going to start with the person to my left, and I'll get to recruit last, which is going to give me some kind of extra information as far as what everyone's doing. Marshal is what lets us move our figures around the board. We're basically able to move any of our figures to one adjacent space or over these different sea lanes. Again, though, if it's my choice or my ally, we're able to then pay 3 money to build a new stronghold somewhere, which is going to help us in other recruit actions. There is the train action, which is where you're going to get some of these cool monsters. Basically, there's a bunch of cards that are out each season. They cost some amount of money, and they're going to give you some benefit. Maybe it's one of those monsters I talked about, which have some cool special abilities, which really make you unique. Or it might be a card that might give you extra money during the military phase, or it might give you an ability to gain some points in a different way, or might help you with honor, or any number of things. But basically, you're using this to help your faction really set itself apart from the other factions, and you're kind of choosing your path to victory, hopefully. If it's my choice or my allies, I'm going to get a discount of $1 when I'm making that purchase. All right, we bring ourselves to the harvest action, where everyone's going to get $1, but if it's me and my ally, we're going to get additional resources. Maybe it's money, maybe it's Ronin, which are something we'll talk about later in the military, or maybe it's points. And that's for every area where I have the most force, every territory. So we're going to evaluate those, and maybe I control this territory, but not this territory. So I'm going to get the bonus from this one. So that is the harvest action. And then finally, we have the betray action. So if I select betray, and if I'm in an alliance, I'm going to lose some honor, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But it's also going to let me replace 2 different players' figures with my own. So that's a pretty big swing of dudes on the board, so to speak. But now my alliance is broken. I don't get any benefit from my ally playing something, and it might mean that one of us is going to lose troops in a particular territory if we're going to battle. So that's the political phase. We go around. I talked about the commies earlier. Basically, there's an area a majority control for each of the different commies, which might give you different benefits. I'm not going to go too much into that, because now we're going to be brought to the military phase, where we are battling in select territories. It's randomized at the start of the round, so we know where we're going to be fighting. And in the order that we randomly determine, we're going to evaluate my force versus the force of my opponents who are there. But there is a secret bidding that happens. So we have our player screens, and behind them, we're going to take some of our money, and we're going to bid on these 4 different actions. We're going to reveal them simultaneously, and then we're going to resolve the actions in order from left to right. So the first one is to commit seppuku. So if I bid 4 and you bid 0, I automatically win that action. I get to carry it out. I have the option then of sacrificing all of my figures there. For each one I sacrifice, I'm going to gain an honor and a point. Okay, that sounds pretty good or pretty bad depending on the situation. The next thing is the ability to take a hostage. So if I win that bid, I get to take one of my opponent's figures, remove them from that territory, decreasing their force, and then I'm going to be able to ransom the hostage next round to get some money. So that's interesting. The third option is whether or not you're going to be able to hire Ronin. So I mentioned the Ronin before. There are these little tokens. And basically, if I win that, I can add all of my Ronin, and I get to use them again in future battles that round. And I'm able to add force, 1 per Ronin token that I have, which can help me win the battle. So the fourth action is evaluated after you determine who has the greater force, after all of these other actions have resolved, because the last one is the warrior poets. And basically, if you win that, for every figure that has been killed in that particular battle this round, you're going to gain a point. So if you win, you're going to get a little token that says that you won that particular territory, and it's going to have some potential endgame scoring points. And you're going to continue through the next season and the final season, and then any endgame scoring. And whoever has the most points at the end of the game, the most glory, I believe, is the winner of Rising Sun. All right, Alex, what do you think? Rising Sun.
Look, this has a lot of strikes against it right off the bat. Let's be clear. It looks stunning on the table. The game looks amazing. The components in this are amazing. And I played this with a Kickstarter edition. Some of the miniatures were painted. It was breathtaking. It was amazing. I mean, with some of these Kickstarter components that came with it, the basically plastic or the dominoes that they used for the actions you could take on your turn. It's gorgeous. That's the plus. The minus is I don't like playing it and don't ever want to play it again. Hey, listeners, this is the sacrifice I make for you. So Sean can review Rising Sun and heap praise upon it and sing its name to the heavens.
I don't know, Alex. I think I might surprise you. I may not have liked this very much at all.
Oh, please. Oh, come on. This is absolutely a Sean game. This is the definition of a game that is a Sean game and absolutely not an Alex game.
Yeah, that's...
Not only is it Dudes on a Map, it also is a game that potentially has open-ended negotiation and potentially has betrayal, which sometimes I like as a mechanic. And I will say this, I didn't hate it as much in this game as I expected to hate it, because it's pretty mild. It is actually very mild. But there's just... I'll get into more specifics, but I just didn't have fun, Sean, at any point, in any way, shape, or form. I did it for the podcast, and now I will say this. I was a good little learner, Sean. I watched a rules overview video ahead of time. I learned well. I was patient because it wasn't you teaching me. So I was, thanks to Jay McNamara of the St. Louis area Board Gamers, who provided a copy and taught as well. There was one other new player in the game, so I wasn't alone in that. And even with a not brutal teach, because it was taught well, no. Playing at 6 players for the first play, maybe not the best idea.
Yeah, I don't think that was wise.
Maybe it wasn't ideal, but there's enough other stuff here that it wasn't going to happen. And I don't think anyone who's listened to this show for a long time would be remotely surprised by that. This is not my kind of game. And I can talk a little bit more about why as we go on. Hey, Sean, did you like it or did you love it?
I loved it. Yeah. No,
yeah.
I loved Rising Sun. I think it's fantastic. Yep. So yeah, I mean, clearly I love Dudes on a Map. My favorite game of all time, Kemet, is a Dudes on a Map game. But it uses this kind of Ameritrash Euro hybrid. So I'm always looking for games that do that. And I'm looking for a game that's better than Kemet. I mean, Kemet's my favorite game. And if there's a game that's better than it, holy cow. Rising Sun is not that. Rising Sun is, I think, excellent. It is not better than Kemet. But I think it also invites a comparison to Blood Rage, which is another one of these CMON games with these amazing miniatures designed by Eric Lang. It's also Dudes on a Map. Also kind of a hybrid Ameritrash Euro style game. And even though the mechanics are very different, this reminds me, or it gives me a similar feeling, or kind of scratches the same itch that a Blood Rage might give me. And so playing this and enjoying this game quite a bit, I naturally compare it to Blood Rage in my mind. Whether that's fair or not, I mean, I think there's enough similarities, not thematically in terms of like Viking and Japanese feudalism, but just in terms of, again, all of those things I talked about, that I have to say to myself, am I going to have a hard time deciding whether I'm going to play Blood Rage or Rising Sun in a given situation? And I don't think I am. I think I'm going to prefer to play Rising Sun just about every time. And so thinking about it, I think that Rising Sun, for me, has replaced Blood Rage. And I think certainly reasonable people can differ. I think people can say, look, I think both Blood Rage and Rising Sun should have a spot in my collection. I think that's fine.
Okay. That's a statement.
So yeah, I have my copy of Blood Rage down here in the basement of the Duchy.
What? That means it's going to be sold. Has it dropped to a 3, Sean?
It sure does, Alex. We've got another Gamers Garage sale coming up at the end of April at Empire. And I can't justify keeping it in my collection as much as I enjoy the game. And as fun as it is, I will have opportunities to play it, I guess, because other people have it in the group, but I'm going to prefer to just hold on to Rising Sun. Blood Rage is not a 3. I gave it a 5 initially. The double take, it went down to a 4. It's definitely not a 3, but at the same time, I can't justify owning it when I'm not going to choose to play it over Rising Sun.
Oh boy, that is a big turn of events for Blood Rage.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Well, I don't think Eric's too bummed, especially if it's getting replaced by another Eric Lang game. But
he's doing just fine. But yeah, ultimately, I think Rising Sun is an excellent Dudes on a Map game. It gives you that opportunity to craft your faction, to build it up in a certain way that's reminiscent to me of Kemet. Although, again, I don't think it does as good a job as Kemet, but it's still enjoyable. And I think there's room for both Kemet and Rising Sun, at least in my game collection.
I felt the similarities, too, between obviously this and Blood Rage and this and Kemet. At least from what I remember of Kemet. It was a very long time ago since I hated that game. After my one play of it. Yeah, I mean, certainly I can see the connections there, and I can see how sure there could be room for both, but I honestly, if I were into this kind of game, I'd probably just need one of the two. So your decision is not super surprising to me.
But just looking at Rising Sun itself, not looking at Blood Rage, it is really an excellent game. And of course, I love this kind of genre, these mechanics. I love the blind bidding that you have for the combat. And it's just a really thinky game, and it's a lot of fun playing with those different cards and the different monsters. And it's really enhanced, I think, by the components. I've had opportunities to play with both just kind of the retail experience and then also the full Kickstarter experience. And I got to tell you, I mean, CMON, as always, as expected, whatever, it knocks it out of the park. It looks fantastic on the table, great table presence. And the art is beautiful. It is stellar. Yeah.
And that is my biggest plus with the game, is it looks stunning. You're right. The minis look great, especially in the Kickstarter version, the plastic flags and the strongholds, and all of it comes together amazingly well. It looks great. It looks great on the table. It is overwhelming to some degree on the table, but it looks great. The components are all well done. The player aids are nice and clue you in pretty well as to what's going on. From a production standpoint, no complaints there. Now, I don't know if this is as good a place to talk about it, Sean. This game takes a long time to set up and break down. Oh, man, is this thing a beast. I mean, that's part of the reason it would be tough for me, even if I did own it and enjoy it, tough to get it to the table, just because I remember Jay, whose copy it was, showed up, I think, something like a half hour early just to make sure the thing got set up properly before the game was even set to start. So that to me is pretty remarkable, and would be a negative for me if I cared enough for it to be a negative.
Right. Well, and I think that's the value of having a solid insert, whether it's something you make yourself or whether it's something you go out and buy, off the market. Yeah, there's definitely some overhead here in terms of setup and breakdown, but if you can get some help with that, whether it's an insert or whether it's having a bunch of players that have played before and kind of know where everything goes, we had 5 people that had previously played and setup was kind of a breeze, although there's still a lot of work to go around for everybody. So let's kind of walk through the game in terms of our gameplay discussion, Alex. What'd you think of the tea ceremony, the alliance aspect of the game?
Yeah, and I don't know. Part of what dictated alliances to some degree in the game I was in was, hey, this person in a 6-player game is getting 2 actions this turn by themselves. Obviously, anyone and everyone would want to ally with them. There's a possibility you get that extra dose of benefits twice instead of just once. So turn order seemed to play more of a role in negotiations than I was expecting. Did you find that to be the case too, Sean?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I've played it at 3, 4, and 5 players. I haven't played it 6, which is, I think you need one of the expansions to do that. But I wasn't really interested in playing this at 6. I enjoyed 5 quite a bit. And 5 created some interesting decisions. Basically, in 5 players in a given round, because there's 7 actions, you're going to have 2 players that are going to get 2 actions that particular round. And so it's kind of interesting. I had one game where I allied with someone that round where we both were getting the 2 actions. So I think the turn order may or may not be less important for the alliance decision, depending on the number of players. Because like in 3 players, everyone's getting at least 2 actions. One player's getting 3 actions. So it's not as big of an advantage, I guess. But it's certainly something to think about, because how you choose your alliances can have a big effect. In terms of where people are, where you're seated with one another, what territories you're going after, what you're both trying to achieve in terms of actions that round. So I definitely think that the tea ceremony of the alliances have a pretty big impact.
Yeah, a little bit. And also there's some caution. Part of the approach I ended up taking with alliances is I don't want to get stabbed in the back, and it's going to be much better if I pick the person ahead of me in turn order if possible. Because if they stab me in the back, at least they don't get any benefit from my action, and worst comes to worst, I get a benefit from their action, and then maybe I stab them in the back. But of course, that's suboptimal for them. So you have to bring something to the table for that to work out. But that was also part of the consideration when this all came about.
And of course, the other interesting thing with the alliances is this is kind of where you might have some negotiation as far as how you set up the alliance. As far as what's going to actually happen in the course of the political turn. Maybe your allies like, well, we really should do a recruit action. Like, no, we need to do a harvest. Tell you what, if you do a harvest, I'll give you $1. Or hey, maybe at the start of the round, if you ally with me and we pick a harvest, I'll give you the production from this particular territory. But that's a promise, and you're not bound by it. And of course, you could always break that, which I know you're a big fan of.
Not a huge fan of that move in a game. Nope.
Well, let's move on to the political phase with you're picking the different political mandate cards. It's interesting because, again, there are 5 different actions, and the deck has 10 cards, 2 of each. So it's possible that in only 7 opportunities for actions, there may be one of the 5 actions that will get buried that you will just never see.
Right. Yeah, there's no guarantee.
But it's certainly an interesting way to play this game. I like these games where you take an action you're able to follow, like San Juan or Race for the Galaxy, or Puerto Rico, obviously, was one of the first ones. And it's everyone's involved. Everyone is doing something on someone else's turn, and there's just interesting dynamics that go along with it. And of course, as an ally, you're really invested in what your partner is doing, and trying to convince them, hey, this really needs to happen. This particular action is going to be more important for me, but I know you want to do this, and there's some give and take there. What did you think of the political mandates?
It's fine. I like this kind of mechanic in the right kind of game. I love it in Roll for the Galaxy, Race for the Galaxy. I think it's well executed there. And that part of the game, or that piece of the game, wasn't necessarily what had it not work so well for me, if that makes sense. It's the interactions of things. And I think when we're talking more about combat, I think is when we'll really get into the meat of my beef with this game.
Oh yeah. No, that's exactly what I expected. So kind of looking at all the actions that are available in the political phase, it's interesting because it's one of those games where the actions are going to take place for the most part, but the order in which they take place is really important. Because maybe before someone picks marshal and you move troops around, you want to be able to have recruited first. Or maybe before your recruit happens, you want to marshal, you yourself marshal or your ally marshal, so that you can build a stronghold so your recruit can get more people out. So I like that tension in a game like, Broom Service, where you have this plan that needs to happen, but oh no, now it's all happening in the wrong order. I like that. I think that's pretty enjoyable.
I think in this game, it was one of the things that didn't bug me very much about it was that piece and how it worked. It's fairly simple mechanically, executes well. I could see how at lower player counts it would work even better potentially, but it worked out just fine. I felt like there was enough choice when I was making those decisions, and certainly that rooting for other people to pick actions is definitely a big part of things. So I found that interesting. I found that part interesting.
But the big action I want to talk about was the train action, because This is something that I enjoy a lot. This is what gives me the cards that are going to make my faction unique. And I should point out too that actually the factions are already unique. They have their own special abilities. But yeah, I love this. I love the ability to personalize your faction, to break rules. It certainly adds to the complexity of a game. Not the rules complexity, but just the decision points and having to be aware of what other people have and are doing. But it's great. And this is how you get the monsters. And the sculpts on the monsters are incredible. And they have cool effects. And it's just cool to slap your faction color base on one of these monsters and put them out on the board. And it's towering over all the other little guys, the bushies and stuff. So
this was my least favorite part, I think, or among one of my least favorite parts of this entire game. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The monsters are really cool, at least the minis are. But in terms of how this game executes and gets muddled, oftentimes it's, oh, hey, you may need to pay me $1 in this situation because you have the most money. Or, hey, you need to pay me this because of that. Or, hey, you're taking a ferry, oh, you need to pay me $1. Or, I have this monster here and I'm trying to plan out my action. What's the effect on that monster again? I don't know. Let's look at your card. Okay, here's your card. Let's take a look. Oh, it does that. Oh, okay, well, if I move it in this space, then this other monster has this effect. Hey, wait, what's that monster do again? Let's take a look at this card. Oh, but that interacts with this other card you already happen to have. And it just gets so dang convoluted so quickly off of these cards. I don't know what it is, but the combination of this made this game such a slog for me. The combinations of these cards in so many situations. It reminded me of my not so fun experience playing. What is that game I don't like, Sean, that I compared this to earlier?
Kemet, Alex.
Kemet, yep. Reminded me of Kemet. Not a good thing for a game if it reminds me of Kemet. I know you love it.
Oh, do I. Well, and it's just interesting, too, because it affects how you're going to play the rest of the game, depending on what you're picking up, right? So there are like certain cards that might get better, like there are virtues, right? Which give you some special ability, and some of them might trigger off of having multiple virtues. So you're kind of going down this virtue path. But if you're picking a bunch of virtue cards, then maybe you're not buying a bunch of monster cards. And then the monsters are really creative too, because it's not just like, oh, this monster's extra force, or this monster, like some of the monsters will count as like a daimyo. So we didn't talk about the different types of figures as much, but you basically have three main figures. Your Bushi, which is the most abundant. You have the Shinto, which you'll use to worship the Kami. And then your Daimyo, which is still just a one-force figure, but it's immune to betrayal. It's immune to be taken hostage. You kind of always will have that presence. But now maybe some of the monsters count as a Daimyo, and maybe you have a monster that says your daimyo, actually not a monster, but you have a card that says all your daimyos get +1 force. So typically you only have one, but if you have a daimyo monster, that's a cool little combo. Or you might have a monster like the Oni, which are kind of these like demon guys, that is 1 force, but if you have the lowest honor in a province, it counts as 4 force. That's really cool. By the way, we didn't really talk about honor. I kind of mentioned in the rules overview, but honor is this track on the board where it breaks ties. So if I am higher up on the track than someone I'm tied with, whether it's force in a province or how much we bid on something, then I'm going to win that tie as someone with the higher honor. So sometimes, a lot of times really, you want to have high honor because winning ties is really, really good. And you might gain honor throughout the game where basically if I gain 1 honor, I just move 1 spot up and then the person directly above me kind of swaps with me. But other times, like with these Oni, you want low honor. And I thought this was an interesting mechanic that people care about for different reasons, and to different degrees, just depending on your overall strategy and the cards that you've acquired. So, Alex, what did you think of this 20th mechanic, this honor mechanic?
So, I like the idea of it as a tiebreaker. I like it. Oddly enough, and these games are not remotely similar, but at its best reminded me of something like Doxu, where it plays quite an interesting role in that kind of rock, paper, scissors tie-breaking mechanic in Doxu. Do you remember that game, Sean?
Oh, yeah. No, I was actually just thinking about it the other day for some reason.
Yeah. And I played it recently. It's actually come out a couple times. Anyway, completely off topic. Doxu, it's trying to kind of punish you for being a bad player and gives you negative points. In the context of Rising Sun, it could be good or bad for you. Yes, it serves as a tiebreaker, but there are certain monsters that certainly came out in my game, where if a player's higher than you on the honor track and that monster moves into their space, they steal victory points from you. They just gobble them right up. So
they drink your milkshake, Alex.
They drink it up. So, oh, you worked hard to get up on the honor track? Oh, well, that's a shame. That worked out pretty badly for you. It could be a net positive to be way down there. And in one sense, that's a positive, I guess, multiple paths to victory. And normally that'd be something I dig, but it's also similar to this game, and we haven't talked fully about combat, but you can get serious points by being really bad at combat, by just slaughtering your own people. Seppuku at the start of combat and war poets at the end. You can buy a bunch of victory points by just murdering your own people. No big deal. And for some reason, I don't know why, that strikes me as like a desperation move. And the fact that it's a viable game strategy actually is something that hurts the game for me in my mind. And I don't know why. Because in most other cases, in most other games, that's something I'd find really cool that oh, well, you could win this way, or you might go this direction and win this way. And maybe it feels like it's rewarding being bad at something, I guess. But I know that's not how it's intended. I know that's not how it plays out. But it feels counter in a way that I don't know if it's hurting the game thematically or what, but it makes it feel frustrating to me.
Huh. Okay. I mean, to me, it seems supremely thematic, just based off that, that feudal culture.
It's probably strong, and it's strong enough thematically to some degree. If you're slaughtering all of your own troops in every single battle you fight in over the course of a game, thematically, I don't think that's going to be a winning strategy. The Suicide Squad.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, seppuku, and we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves in the battle, but there's multiple applications to it, right? I mean, maybe it's something you're going to lose. You might as well get some points out of it. It denies the hostage from happening, or maybe you're doing it so that you can actually win in the end, which sounds counterproductive, or sounds counterintuitive rather.
Yeah. I sure. Assuming you have enough money for that to be interesting, which there's no guarantee both players will have money to have that be interesting.
Yeah, but you can play, like, there's some interesting interactions with how these things are resolved, the order that they're resolved in, and it's supremely compelling. That blind bidding system for combat, again, which we're kind of ahead of. But basically, let's say that you're going to lose in one sense, but you're able to place enough Ronin if you win the bet, but you don't have enough money to win the bet, but you might actually win a tie, but you have lower honor than your opponent, so you couldn't win the tie. Oh, wait a second, when I commit seppuku, I'm going to gain glory and honor for each figure I sacrifice. So now I've moved up in honor. I'm now above you in honor. Now I'm able to win my Ronin, the Ronin bid, and I get to add my tokens in, and we have the same force, but because I use that judiciously to move up in honor, I now break the tie. Boom, I win the combat. And that stuff happens. That happens all the time in my plays.
Sure. In a lot of games, I dig that too, Sean. The trick is, in this case, there are so much of the time, the combats themselves are uninteresting. You can calculate. No, you can calculate based on how much money someone has. If I have way more than they do, or whatever the case might be, oh, well, this is pretty easy. Or, oh, these guys are allies. There's no actual combat here. I mean, I agree with you that there is the potential for interesting mind games in this, and they do come up. But a lot of the time, and a lot of the combats that I saw, it's more often than not, it's an uninteresting, like, I have more than you, and I have way more money than you. Sorry.
Yeah, but one of the things we didn't talk about in the rules was that the winner of the combat winds up giving all the money that they bid to the losers. They equally divide it among the losers, which then has lasting consequences for the rest of the round, because now if the loser of the battle is in a subsequent battle, now they have more money. I mean, there's just so many moving pieces here. And I guess directly to your point, I will say that, if a certain battle is a foregone conclusion, it's because you've maneuvered in such a way to make that happen. And yeah.
Great. And I think you should be rewarded for it. And congratulations if the player does it. That doesn't make it an interesting game to play necessarily from my perspective. And again, this is my taste talking. This isn't necessarily an objective. Like, I understand I am way in the minority on this, Sean, but it's just not my style. It's just not the kind of thing that engages me all that well. And it's not the kind of thing I'm frankly good at, which affects my opinion of a game to some degree. So yeah, I found a lot of the combat uninteresting for that reason. And I understand and I get the merit of why. Merit, that's a key word. That's going to be a key word. Remember that one later, guys.
Spoiler alert.
I can see the merit of what's going on here. And for my taste and for what I like to play, it just a lot of times is not so fun. Anyway.
All right. Well, I guess we kind of discuss combat. So, Alex, would you say that overall this is a thematic game?
Yeah, I'd say so. There are some things that have it disconnect. I mean, potential things, but it's not actual things. I think for the most part, you feel immersed and at least immersed enough. I felt like a very bad warlord, which I think is thematic. So, yeah, it's a thematic game.
Yeah, no, I agree. It definitely is thematic. I mean, I think a lot of games that kind of have this Ameritrash pedigree definitely feel thematic. I mean, not in a narrative sense, but everything makes sense, right? The ways that you're gaining honor, the ways that you're getting the glory victory points, all of that makes perfect sense. And like just some of the things like the way some of the monsters interact or the titles of certain cards and the benefit they give you, I think it all is pretty thematic overall. Well, let's look at what the guild had to say, and a lot of thoughts over there. We're not going to be able to get to all of them. So Ziggy said, I went crazy and bought everything during the Kickstarter campaign. I managed to play my first game recently. It was a 6-player game with all new players. It took 4 hours, but we were all engaged the entire time. With 6 new players, the tea ceremonies were very quick, although there was a lot of cajoling and dealing during the action and war phases, and people tended to help out their allies as best as they could. I thoroughly enjoyed this game. There are so many options for gaining points, and it's difficult to tell who will win until the very end, leading to a lot of discussion and deal-making. On a side note, the playmat is absolutely essential to this game. I can't imagine how we would have had the space to fit all the minis on the cardboard map. So, let me point out here, as far as like the negotiation and the deal-making and things like that, one of the things that Eric said when this game first came out, or was coming out on Kickstarter at least, was that in the same way that Blood Rage was kind of a spiritual successor or had its lineage in Risk, this game, Rising Sun, has its lineage in diplomacy. And I didn't quite feel that or see that necessarily.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo says, we just broke this out a week or so ago. Well, probably a lot longer now. Anyway, during the game, I thought it went a little long, but that may have been because there was a lot of politicking going on. I remember saying, well, I don't need to play that again. And yet, I've been thinking about this game, researching strategies, watching playthroughs since our contest. That to me is the mark of a unique game. I never felt that about Blood Rage, and certainly not about The Godfather. And I will say his description of kind of how he feels about this is kind of how I felt about Blood Bowl. It's sort of that, man, there's so much of this that I don't get and that kind of annoys me, but I am fascinated by it. I'm absolutely fascinated by it. I didn't feel that way about Rising Sun, but yep. Anyway.
So Weeding Han said, I enjoyed Rising Sun with their spectacular minis and the lead and follow turn structure that facilitates the game flow. I don't own the copy, and I'm beginning to regret not getting it. I'm looking forward to playing my next game. Ducal rating of a 5 out of 6.
Hey! Nick Hayes says, I am very cautious on Rising Sun. I didn't back it. I don't own it. And the main reason that I am so not really excited about it is because of hearing that it's the spiritual successor to Diplomacy. I generally don't do negotiation games, and the one game of Diplomacy that I played was the all-time worst experience in my gaming life. So Rising Sun, while it looks gorgeous, is going to have to win me over if I ever get a chance to play it. I know I'm weird and out there because I'm not frothing at the mouth over this one, but while I love the theme and the setting, I just can't get excited about the negotiation. And what I will say about this to Nick is, if that is the reason that you're avoiding playing this, I actually think, as someone who's not usually a fan of negotiation games, it's not as big of a deal in this. It's not as that is not the reason not to play it for me. So if that's what's holding you back, I might think a little differently there. But if there's other reasons, you think it's overproduced, or the combat's something that doesn't look engaging, or you don't like dudes on a map, that is certainly a reason that would make sense to me. So
yeah, no, I get that. So Ian Kissel says, I played one game with the Kickstarter pieces, but mostly the content that comes in the base game. I had a good time playing it, but there was not as much negotiation as I was expecting. That said, I appreciated that once you made a deal, there were consequences for breaking some of it, so it was not quite totally open. The game felt a little short, though. It clocks in at 90 minutes, and I want it to go longer. I think it would be best to 5 players, as always having one player not in the alliance would dial up the negotiation. A fun game, worth the hype, I think, but not a top-tier one. I give it a 4 out of 6. And yeah, I do like the odd number players better. I like the fact that someone is going to get left out, especially if it's kind of a punish the leader aspect. So, yeah, I think I enjoyed it most at the odd player counts, 5 especially.
The Mr. Sean says, I played a 4-player game of Rising Sun in all its Kickstarter glory a few weeks ago, and I am conflicted about it. It's a very solid game that I'm very glad I didn't purchase. There's nothing negative I can say about the gameplay, really, except it just didn't excite me. The game was so close, in fact, it ended in a 3-way tie for first. It should have been insanely tense, but when I lost by 1 honor, I was just, meh. I need to play it again to see if it was just my mood, but I think it'll end up being a really good game. It's not for me. And I may be in the minority with this opinion, but shamelessly overproduced would be an understatement. The enormous minis, the faux ceramic tiles, did nothing to enhance the game for me, other than make it difficult to count troops behind the Oni. Good game, too much bling, too much money. Signed, Watchdog Not Duke Sean.
All right, very good. Well, I think it's time to head into final thoughts. Alex, I think that you should have the honor of going first.
Oh, I'm going first? Yeah, remember I said merit was a key word? Well, hey, for folks who know our rating scale, we rank things on a 1 to 6 scale, 1 being poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun, not a very common score, 6 being an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10, slightly more common score, but yeah. It's not going to be anywhere in the upper half of the scale in this one. I will say, soon after playing this for me, Sean, I was thinking this could be, maybe it might be a 3, maybe. Look, it's a beautiful game. It wasn't that bad, but no. This is for me the definition of a 2. Game has some merit, but has significant issues, and I don't think the issues are necessarily anything inherent in the design. The issues are, for me, it's just a game I don't like. It's a style of game I don't like. It's just like if Sean plays a hidden movement game, it ain't gonna score too well, probably. And if it does, it's doing something really interesting or cool or whatever else. This doesn't do anything special with dudes on a map that has me think more highly of that. The negotiation isn't something I dig, and it's, while not offensive here, certainly doesn't increase my play enjoyment of this one. I don't have fun with it. I'm not going to play it again, not even at a con. Please don't try and invite me to play this. I'm not going to do it. And that being said, I know the majority of listeners are more aligned with Sean, and my opinion on this is both predictable and will likely not affect your enjoyment of the game. So I think for what it is, it's beautifully produced and probably well designed if you like this kind of game. And it's not my cup of tea by any stretch of the imagination. 2, game has some merit, but has significant issues. That's my score.
Yep. Figured. So, Alex, for me, I think based on my description, my review thus far, I think people will probably figure this is going to be somewhere between a 5 and a 6 for me. So, what's your prediction? What am I giving this game?
5.
Ah, very good. You guessed correctly, Alex. Yeah, I'm going to give this game a 5. A great game. Will rarely turn down a play of it. This is a very solid 5. Now, recall that initially I gave Blood Rage a 5 when we first reviewed it, only to drop to a 4 in our Dukes Double Take a year later. I think that this is going to be on much more solid ground than Blood Rage was. There are so many aspects of this game that I enjoy more than Blood Rage. I love the bidding system in combat. I think it is just I think it's super smart, super cool. Now, I will say earlier that, I said, well, I don't know that this game draws as much from diplomacy. Actually, I think it draws a decent amount from an old Milton Bradley game from the Game Master series called Shogun. Not to be confused with the Shogun that's kind of like Wallenstein. This is Shogun that later became a game called Samurai Swords. Not to be confused with the Japanese-themed game Samurai Swords that was derivative of Bang, the card game. Anyway, yeah, that game Shogun, Samurai Swords, had a similar bidding mechanism on these different types of actions with ninjas. There were ninjas instead of Ronin, I think, if I remember correctly. And it's actually very similar to that. I think Eric probably drew some inspiration from that. I don't know that for a fact. But what I will say is he's definitely streamlined it and made it better. He's updated it because that's this point, that's like a 30-year-old game. And so he's definitely taken that type of mechanic and gave it some modern enhancements on top of it. So I love that aspect of the game. I love the negotiation, even though it's light negotiation and it's not super punishing or super binding in that way. I love the lead and follow aspect of the political phase. The miniatures are fantastic. Being able to craft your faction how you will. It's just great. There are so many things that I like about this game. Again, though, it's not a 6. It's not replacing Kemet for me. I'm going to keep both of them on my shelf, but it's solid. And I suspect that a year from now, it's going to stay a 5. Is it possible it goes up to a 6? It's hard to say. I've got a bunch of, the Kickstarter extras. I actually didn't have my Kickstarter copying at the time because I'm super bad at doing timely pledge managers, but I got to play with Jeremy's copy and then also my buddy Ellie's copy back at Arizona Game Fair when it first came out. And there's just a lot to explore there. A lot of different ways to play this game. A lot of variability. I mean, we didn't even talk about some of the variability here, which is insane. Basically, those different cards that you're purchasing throughout the game, there are different sets of them that you can use. So there's tons of variability there. The different kami, which again, we barely touched on. There are different kami you can use. Then there's different factions and there's different modules and it's crazy. So yeah, bottom line, 5 for me. So that's going to do it for the Duke's review of Rising Sun from CMON, designed by Eric Lang. A very predictable 2 from Alex and a 5 from Sean.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
All right, next up in the Dukes Quadruple Take, even more fun for me, Sean. Even more fun. 2 games I haven't played and don't know a ton about, so you're going to have to lead this discussion. Shocker. First one we're talking about is from an episode where you discussed the Colonists, co-hosted with Travis Hill, and from Low Player Count. Sean, you liked this one a lot. You gave it a 6. Travis Hill gave this one a 6. Why is this game so darn good, and what do you think about it now?
So The Colonists is really and truly excellent. This is, so Tim Poles was the designer, and I believe it was his first design. And this takes a lot of these Uwe games where you are getting all these resources, you're converting them into other stuff to do other stuff with them and build certain things and score points, similar to like a Le Havre. But then this adds a spatial action selection where you have a pawn on this board, and as you move around, it determines which actions you can take, and you're expanding on this board where you're selecting actions from, and then you're building on your player board, and you're upgrading your stuff, and it is crazy because this is going to take like 8 to 10 hours to play the full game. It's going to take that long to play through all 4 eras of this game. And you can choose what you want to do. Maybe I just want to play the first 2 eras. Maybe I want to start an era 3 or just do era 4, although there's still kind of a lot of work you have to do to get to that point. But the fact that you have that choice, or if you say, hey, let's just do this whole dang thing, let's get it done, it is really cool. So I'm going to keep this game at a 6, an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. It is excellent. It is a style of Euro game that I enjoy, and it kind of just ratchets things up in a certain way that is really satisfying to me. And I should point out that when we redid our top 10 games of 2017, this was my number one game of the year because it just barely qualified for 2017. It came out in the US like the first or second week in January. So number one game for me of 2017.
Pretty strong statement. Yeah. Guild had a lot to say about this, and actually not all positive. Kevin Har said, the Colonist has such a limited audience. It can take all day. The setup is troubling. There are a myriad of small rules. But for a certain few, the Colonists will fill the right void. Luckily for me, I'm the type of gamer this game was designed for. While Eras 1 and 2 are not that interesting, Eras 3 and 4 offers so much depth and variety of strategy. The logistics puzzle of the game is greatly satisfying. I set this game up on my table and play it over several nights. I've only played this game solo. I would never want to teach this game to someone. This game is fantastic for a deep-thinking solo game where I don't have to worry about AP. There are a few drawbacks, though. Many tiles are not thematic, the placement of buildings has no bearing on the game, a real missed opportunity, and the game is so full of icons that the art suffers. Still, this is a solid 4 for me and has the potential to go even higher.
Ian Kissel says, I played the first 2 eras and I just don't think the game is worth the effort. The people I know who love it either play it solo or set it up and play it over several evenings with a significant other. If that is you, I think this game could be great. For any other application, it stretches what could be a 3-hour experience over several more hours, and the payoff is not good enough. I rate it a 2. I guess a 4 if you want to play solo or over several evenings.
So call it a 3? I don't know. Matthew S. says, The Colonists is in my top 5 games. There aren't many games that I would enjoy playing all day long. This is one of them. I think Uwe Rosenberg's greatest accomplishment is serving as the inspiration for Tim Pool's. I've played both Aura et Labora and Caverna, and I consider the Colonists substantially better than either of them. To some extent, this game is about coming up with a long-term plan and not getting distracted by any shiny, short-term opportunities that arise while you are following it. The embassies add an extra degree of variability and replayability. So there you go.
Lots of other thoughts over on the Guild, so definitely go check that out. But yeah, that's the Colonists, which stays at a solid 6 for me.
Hey, next up is another game I don't know much about. Rum Bones Second Tide. Sean, you reviewed this one with our good buddy Max. You gave this one a 4. Solid 2-player game, fairly intuitive, but admitted the setup is kind of brutal. Max, at the time, gave it a conditional 3. He wanted to see what extra factions would do the game, and said the game could go up to a 4. Sean, where are you at, and do we know where Max is at with this one?
No, I'd reached out to Max, and he hadn't gotten back to me yet. I'm low on his list of priorities, apparently. But no, so yeah, I gave this a 4. It's going to stay at a 4. It's a great beer and pretzels game. It's a great Ameritrash dice chucking game. The idea here is pretty simple. Basically, you have this crew of pirates. You have these 3 pirate heroes, and you can kind of mix and match. There's gunners and there's captains, cavaliers, or they're like fencers or something. Anyway, you choose which class of characters, and there's different pirate crews that have these different thematic themes. And so you're going to control these as they go from one pirate ship to another, because these 2 pirate ships are usually side by side. They're boarding each other. But what else is cool is it draws a little bit of inspiration from a MOBA, from a video game like League of Legends, which is a multiplayer online battle arena where you basically have these pirate henchmen, the crew, who are moving along these lanes, the middle lane and the 2 outer lanes, and you don't control them. They just move forward. They do their attacks without you having input on what they're doing, really. And you can use the heroes to kind of enhance them, to kind of help them out. And so there's this cool like push. You know, you're pushing your troops forward, and there's the push back, and you guys meet, and it's a lot of fun. And this is the 2nd edition of the game, essentially. I hadn't played the 1st edition, but apparently this had kind of smoothed out some of the rough edges. But no, I think Rum Bones Second Tide is really a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I'm intrigued by it. I think the setup probably also holds it back from coming out a ton too, I'd have to imagine.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a lot to set up. So, completing his trifecta of discussing all 3 games that we have here this episode, Ian Kissel says, Rum and Bones has some neat ideas, and Second Tide has some major improvements over the first edition. However, I think the game is a little long for what it provides. The cool part of the game is putting a team together. After that, though, there is some strategy, but a lot is determined by luck. That means the fun is front-loaded and fizzles out as you play. I would play it again, but don't care if I do, so that makes it a ducal 3. And again, for me, I'm going to keep it at a 4. A good game, worth playing just not all the time, belongs in the Duchy.
Cool. Well, that'll do it for our Dukes quadruple take. Sean keeping both games just where they were. Colonist stays at a 6, and Rum and Bones Second Tide stays right there at a 4. This week for our discussion topic, we are talking about something that was posted on the Guild, and we steal a lot from the Guild. Are inspired by our Guild.
It's an homage, Alex. We're paying homage.
Paying homage. Michael Fahrenbrook came up with this one, and it was a post called Mount Rushmore of Board Gaming. And his concept, or the question he was asking was, what 4 games contribute to the modern board gaming hobby the most? Are they 4 classics? Does anything from the past 10 years makes the cut? His 4 that he proposed for this Mount Rushmore of board gaming, and this is not in designers, but in games themselves, Catan, and he says that one brought Euro games to America. Magic the Gathering, keeping yours and my favorite friendly local game stores up and running. Pandemic, maybe too new, but it's the game that brought me into the hobby, so it gets a place on my Rushmore. And Dominion created a genre of games that exploded, but still feels relevant. Sean, having given this question some thought, where are you at with your Mount Rushmore?
So yeah, I gave this a considerable amount of thought, Alex. And interestingly, a couple days ago in my YouTube feed, I saw that there was a video from like a year or two ago. I don't know if you're familiar, Alex, with College Humor's YouTube channel and Adam Ruins Everything.
I am indeed. I've never seen an episode, but I've seen clips from it.
Yeah, so I guess he's on True TV now, but he started off doing these on College Humor's YouTube channel. Anyway, he goes around and gives you like, oh, here's the real facts behind this certain thing. And there happened to be one on Mount Rushmore. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of odd. But I wonder also if maybe like Google Chrome had seen that I was reading up on Mount Rushmore stuff, and so it knows to tell YouTube. I don't know. Probably with everything going on, that's probably what happened. But anyway, he did this thing where he kind of went through the history of Mount Rushmore. Basically, it originally was supposed to be the South Dakota landowners wanted to promote the state, and so they wanted to do this giant mountain carving of these Wild West heroes. And so they hired this guy, got some funding for it. His name was Borglum, and he came in and he said, cool, that's a great idea, except they're going to be presidents. So he decided to do the presidents, and I went along with it. So he carved out the heads of Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt. And actually it was supposed to be like an entire bust or even legs and stuff. But by the time they finished the heads, he died and they ran out of money. So they're like, oh, that's done. They didn't even bother cleaning the rubble from the base. So there's all of these, giant boulders at the base, which were supposed to get cleaned up. That didn't happen. So here's, kind of why he picked the presidents that he did. So Washington, obviously the first president, the founder of the country, and he's of mythical status almost. And then you have Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, and had some other bad qualities too. And then you've got Lincoln, who of course led the United States through one of its most tumultuous times, the Civil War. The Union's torn apart, and he held it together and brought it back together. And then was assassinated. And then you have Theodore Roosevelt, who at the time was the president. And looking back, there are some great things that Teddy Roosevelt did with the national parks. But at the time, he wasn't, he was Teddy Roosevelt. He was the president. He got put there because Borglum was a friend of Teddy Roosevelt's and I guess worshiped Teddy Roosevelt. So, hey, he's the 4th president on Mount Rushmore. So what I wanted to do was kind of figure out games that have kind of a similar connection to their place in the modern board game hobby. So what do you think? Should we just kind of go president by president and you give yours, I give mine?
Yeah, I think we can do that. I think that's fine.
All right, Alex. So you're George Washington. What would you pick for that?
The one I have seen on here and the one I agree with is Catan. I think Catan is a perfect fit for this one. It's sort of the brought Euro games, brought board games in general to a wider audience, showed people that rolling dice can be something more than just moving a pawn. And yes, there were games that preceded it that did this as well, but Catan, for the impact it had, it fits in that role for me. And where is that where you went with this one, Sean?
No. All right, so I am going back in time because Washington was our first president. So I'm going all the way back to 1957.
Now, wait a minute. Now remember, this is modern board gaming we're talking about.
Oh, yeah. No, I know.
Okay. All right.
I got it. Don't worry about it. So my choice for George Washington would be a little game called Risk.
Oh, no. Come on.
Yeah, no.
Come on.
I think Risk makes perfect sense. So Risk has, it's dudes on a map. It's kind of for modern games, it's the proto dudes on a map game. And it has influenced countless other modern hobby games that have come since it. I mean, we talked about Blood Rage owing its lineage to a game like Risk. And I think that we've seen enough adaptations of it which push it into the hobby realm. But really, this was kind of the first, at least in the latter half of the 20th century, that would become the Ameritrash hobby. Or at least the Ameritrash side of things.
I mean, hey, Monopoly. Why don't we put Monopoly on the Mount Rushmore of modern board gaming?
Well, no, and I think Risk belongs there. I mean, Risk is not... Monopoly is not necessarily well regarded among board gamers, but even though I wouldn't necessarily be too eager to play Risk, I'm not going to deride it.
No, it doesn't. It's not a modern... I wouldn't call that a hobby game even. I am highly disappointed with your choice.
I disagree.
There are plenty of hobbyists who would still play Monopoly. That doesn't make it a hobby game.
Yeah, but I mean, think of like Risk Legacy, right? I mean,
right, sure.
I think,
but Risk Legacy, yeah. If you'd said Risk Legacy, which by the way I'd consider for one of my spots on my Mount Rushmore later on, but not Risk itself.
The modern board game hobby started before Settlers of Catan. It's been around for a long while. You've got all of the the Avalon Hill type games, and I think we need to go back a little bit farther than 1994 or 95.
Oh boy. This is going to go sideways very fast here.
All right, well, agree to disagree.
I think, sir, you have misunderstood the assignment.
No, I think we're probably just approaching it in different ways, Alex. Me with a lot of insight and forethought.
Who's your Jefferson, Sean?
Well, hold on. What exactly was the prompt? What exactly was the topic?
I am basing it off of the initial thread, which was the Mount Rushmore. What would the Mount Rushmore of board gaming be? And then what 4 games contributed to the modern board gaming hobby the most?
Oh, so contributed to. So I would definitely say that Risk has had a long and prodigious influence on modern board gaming, especially on the Ameritrash side of things. So it doesn't have to be a game that was designed in the 90s or later.
They don't have to be, correct. I think, for the purposes of this, I'm considering, and again, we've done this before, where we have tackled an assignment in very different ways. You're going to get very different lists on this one. I will say the guild consensus is more in line with my thinking. I certainly have not seen anything close to Risk suggested in the thread. But you know what?
And that's fair. We'll approach this differently. All right. So Alex, who's your Jefferson?
So this is interesting because I didn't think about it necessarily in terms of matching to a president, right? It somewhat fits mine, but there are 2 games that could be considered the Jefferson, I guess. And it's either Pandemic or Dominion. I was on board pretty much with Michael put 3 of his 4. I 100% agreed with. So I went with let's call that one Pandemic. We'll call that one Pandemic. Pandemic's the Jefferson.
Oh, all right. Well, I guess that's fine. You can pick Pandemic. I mean, I guess I just put a little more thought into this, but go on.
I don't think it's that you put more thought into this. I think there's different thought. I actually responded to the thread on the guild, good sir. I interacted with our fan base and community. I put plenty of thought in.
Well, excuse me. I had plenty of other things on my plate that I needed to attend to, Alex.
Didn't mean to be insensitive. Anyway, Jeez. Pandemic, and I'll explain why I think this is a good fit, and I like this pick. It was revolutionary in its own way, and Jefferson was pretty revolutionary as far as a thinker. Pandemic was pretty revolutionary in terms of this cooperative game, this game that isn't you against each other, but you working together for something. And it represented a fundamental shift in how people think about games. And now cooperative games are such a part of the hobby. I think it has to be in there somewhere. So that's my pick, Pandemic.
Okay, fair enough. So for my Jefferson, in the same sense that Washington and Jefferson were fairly close in time, first president and third president, I have jumped forward a little bit in time as well. So I'm jumping forward to a game from 1959, Alex.
Oh, boy.
And that game is Diplomacy. Is that all right? Are you on board with that?
No, I'm with you. This I have more acceptance for than I do Risk. Any case.
So you look at someone like Jefferson, who was, he kind of started the Republicans, the Jeffersonian Republicans, which was anti-federalist. And so starting these political parties, right? And Washington warned against political parties. So Jefferson is kind of the evolution of early American politics. And in the same way, Diplomacy is kind of the evolution of Dudes on a Map. So there's no randomness. You're not rolling dice. All of the units are of a similar power, essentially. And there's negotiation. And it's just sort of a refinement on Dudes on a Map. And it's something that was widely played by politicos of the day. And it's played extensively today, especially by internet forum. Well, not forum, but by email or by online or whatever. And it is definitely, I think, has had far-reaching influence on modern board gaming as well. And it shows that you can kind of take that Ameritrash, Dudes on a Map, dice chucking, and you can kind of refine it a bit, almost creating that hybrid. I mean, it's not quite, I wouldn't call it a Euro, like a Euro Ameritrash hybrid, but it was kind of paving the way for that.
Here's my question with Diplomacy.
And don't ever play it, Alex. Don't ever play it.
And I never planned. With Risk and Diplomacy. So my pick, Pandemic, and I think the pick of a lot of folks, has created a genre that is thriving currently, a whole genre. Diplomacy adds negotiation, I guess, and there are some negotiation games. But is it enough to have that much of an impact to be one of the four?
Well, like I said, it's not just negotiation. Although we did we not just talk about a game that the designers said?
Yeah, we did. Sure.
Draws its lineage from Diplomacy.
Yeah, but I feel like in terms of the kinds of games that are coming out these days and being played, there are far more cooperative games than there are games inspired by Diplomacy.
All right. And I don't know that that's necessarily the criteria for what's the Jefferson of Mount Rushmore of board games. Like I said, I think it's showing a refinement of a game like Risk in the same sense that there was kind of a development of the political party system, which was really in theory non-existent under Washington. So no, but I think it has a long-lasting effect, and I think that it may not be as easy to see those links, but I think that they definitely exist.
I also, and I hope I'm not spoiling what would be a tremendous troll on me, if all four of these happen to be Dudes on a Map, like the evolution of Dudes on a Map, like if that's what you were working towards, bravo, good job. But anyway, we'll see. Because, I don't know, it sounds like you have a Dudes on a Map game and then a twist on a Dudes on a Map game, are your two so far.
We'll see, Alex.
Okay, I can tell. It's a very Dudes on a Map-centric framework, too, so far. Anyway.
Yeah, no, sure.
Okay. Hey, Sean, who's your Lincoln?
Okay, so again, we talked about Lincoln. He was the president that got America through the Civil War, through the tearing apart of the Union.
Uh-huh.
So in the same way that Lincoln is, 60 years ahead of Jefferson or so and ahead of Washington, I'm going to jump forward a little bit.
Ooh, how much further?
And I'm going to jump forward to, I think it was 92, 93.
Oh, that's good.
With Magic: The Gathering.
Okay. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
So the early 90s were kind of an interesting time. Warhammer didn't, like the miniature games didn't have the widespread appeal, or they weren't as big as they are now. And Dungeons & Dragons and other role-playing games were kind of on a downward trend until they would kind of blow up again in the 2000s. And so Magic was this new thing, this collectible card game that just hit it big, that is still incredibly strong to this day. Its effect on the hobby is huge, maybe not necessarily in terms of design, although I would say that a lot of the deck builders would owe some influence to Magic, but in terms of the way that it kept gaming up and running and the way that it's kept local gaming stores in business. There's certainly a lot of game stores that can now sustain themselves on just board games, but that wasn't really the case in the 90s. They were few and far between. And Magic became something that for a long period of time, and even for a lot of stores today, is needed to keep that store afloat. And so in the same way that Lincoln kept the union together during difficult times, we kind of have a low point in the early mid 90s in gaming, and now here's something that's going to bolster gaming. So that's Magic the Gathering.
Here's the crazy thing with this one, Sean.
Oh?
No. When I posted my initial response to this in the guild, I said I think Catan and Pandemic are locks, and I think Dominion probably is too at the time. And then I said I would dispute that Magic the Gathering fits as far as board gaming goes. And I've drawn that distinction, and I think it's not useful and probably not accurate to draw that distinction. And quite frankly, you have sold me. Your pitch there has sold me.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Initially I was thinking Dominion, but in the framework of who's a Lincoln in this situation, I don't think it quite fits. It certainly didn't unite enough of the gaming community. And while it's revolutionary and has helped with modern board games, I don't think it has enough to quite earn a place. I think it's a very impactful game. But I think if I'm thinking of pure impact, even though I'm not a fan of it myself, I have to concede that Magic the Gathering probably belongs in that space. And as a unifier of friendly local gaming stores of a certain kind, I think you made a compelling argument, and you have persuaded me to switch my pick to Magic the Gathering.
Cool.
So I'm with you for that. I'm with you on that one. All right, I'm on board. All right, you've turned it around. We're not doing history of dudes on a map here. I'm good.
All right, well, happy to have you on board. So, Alex, let's talk about Teddy Roosevelt, who's your final head.
So I wasn't sure about this one, and it was the guild that steered me in this case. And part of it is I wanted enough variety to acknowledge enough games within the hobby. And part of it is acknowledging something that's more of a modern at the time, or more of a modern twist on things. And I think the pick that I saw in the guild, and I'm trying to see who said it first, probably Nick Hayes. Looks like Nick Hayes. Nick Hayes was certainly one of the people who said it. It looks like he said it first, so I'll give Nick Hayes the credit on this one. Risk Legacy. I think Risk Legacy is a fantastic fit in this case. One, it covers my bases for dudes on a map, so that base is covered. But two, there is this revolution in the hobby to some degree of these legacy games, of these games as stories, games that are non-permanent, games that can evolve and grow and change as things go on. And I think Risk Legacy covers that base beautifully. It was a game that flipped the concept of what a game is on its head to a degree. And because of that, I think it absolutely deserves a spot. Even though it's a game I haven't played and am unlikely to play, I think its significance is enough where it merits inclusion and merits inclusion, I think, in the Roosevelt spot. So that will wrap up my 4. Risk Legacy, Nick Hayes. All credit to you for inspiring this. I probably wouldn't have thought along these lines on my own. So, yep, that's my pick.
Okay, fair enough. So, Alex, let's go back initially to the 4, right? We've got Teddy Roosevelt, and what was the purpose of his inclusion on Mount Rushmore?
Friends with the creator of the mountain.
And of course, I am the sculptor, the creator of this version of Mount Rushmore, am I not? So
Baseball Highlights 2045?
Yep, that's it. Baseball Highlights 2045. Of course, because
you got me.
We are friends with Mike Fitzgerald. I mean, Baseball Highlights is a great game in its own right. It's a more modern game, and we are friends with Mike Fitzgerald. So I think it is the Teddy Roosevelt.
What?
We're just gonna laugh a little more. So just hang in there, everybody.
You redeemed yourself. Oh God, you redeemed. Oh man, was that good? Perfect.
Yeah, you like that?
Great. You gotta read the guild because I am incapable of reading stuff right now.
Alex, I am operating on levels you couldn't even understand. I am like multiple dimensions. Like I'm operating in the fourth dimension here.
I saw in a gift store at a zoo once when I was much younger. They were selling a 4D puzzle. And I tried to figure out what they were selling a 4D puzzle. And if you want to do the rational argument, the 4D is, well, the puzzle takes you time to complete. So that's the puzzle, is trying to find the time to do the puzzle. But I thought the best tagline would be, the fourth dimension is fun. Anyway, yes, you have outmaneuvered me in such a fantastic way.
Sure did. Baseball Highlights 2045, best dimension.
Best mention. Yeah, I can't even dispute it. Oh, Mike. I think he's gonna dig this one. Anyway, hey, what did the guild think about all this, Sean?
So looking at Tim Tix, who also kind of mentioned on the guild the purpose of which president was up there for what reason, he suggested Catan as the Washington for introducing the strategic family game to a worldwide community, Dominion for developing or using a single revolutionary mechanism, Pandemic for introducing co-op play, and then he wasn't quite sure on the last one, the Teddy Roosevelt, some type of story game, maybe storytelling game, maybe Risk Legacy, micro games like a love letter. But I think he was definitely on the right track, trying to align the games to the presidents, so to speak.
All right. Phil Hendrickson said probably should include Carcassonne simply because it gave us the Meeple. Not a game I still play, but how many games have had their pieces made into sofa pillows? Interesting. Interesting point, Phil.
Oh, yeah. So Kevin Haar, he kind of went at it a little bit differently. Instead of thinking of games, he considered designers. So he went with Uwe Rosenberg, Stefan Feld, Rainer Knizia, and Vlada Chvátil. And, I definitely think Rosenberg and Feld would be up there. Knizia, even though I'm not a fan, probably deserves a spot. The Vlada Chvátil might be, well, I guess if it's going to be the Teddy Roosevelt, then it should just be Mike Fitzgerald. So,
yeah, no kidding. No, it's a cool way to think about it, especially when that analogy came about. Well, here's what all the presidents on there were and what they represented, and yeah, it makes sense to think about it in that context, and certainly leads to some interesting results. I like BJ's answer, by the way. The Mount Rushmore for the Duchy would be Mottainai, also Baseball Highlights 2045, Combat Commander or Zolkin, depending, and Happy Salmon. Yeah, I think that's probably fair. It's a good Mount Rushmore. I don't know which one belongs to which, although apparently Baseball Highlights 2045 is locked into the Teddy Roosevelt spot. So, oh man. Hey, this has been a long one. We should probably wrap this sucker up pretty soon here, huh?
Yeah, it sure has. But, we had a lot of things to talk about since we hadn't recorded in a while. All right, well, but before we go, Alex, let's make sure we talk about the rest of the runners-up for naming episode 172.
Joseph Owens came in with Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Game, which is solid because I want to forget about Rising Sun. So, yep, made sense. Good name. I dug it.
Nicole Capral suggested CMON Sail Away, but kind of a playoff Come Sail Away, the Styx song. Makes sense because we've got Rising Sun, which is a CMON game, and so is Rising Rum Bones Second Tide, and it's a pirate game, so Come Sail Away, or CMON Sail Away.
Our buddy Eugene, from back in the great state of New Mexico, came with CMON, The Ruin of Many a Poor Boy, which I didn't get, but Sean, you got.
Yeah, it's actually lyrics from the song House of the Rising Sun. It actually goes back a long time. There's been a lot of different versions of it. I think the Animals one is the best known one. It's used in a lot of movies like Casino and Suicide Squad. So yeah, I think that very, very clever. And then Brett Mowers suggested Ahoy There, Kami, instead of Ahoy There, Matey. The kami, of course, are the Japanese spirits that are in Rising Sun. So I think that it's a nice little blend of the pirate and the Japanese mythology.
Dug it. It's a good one. And Todd Kauk came with Kick in the Shinto, which was initially my pick for the episode title. I was on board with this one, very close on this one, because, hey, a lot of these games are a kick in the shin. A shin is a bone. Shinto, referencing Rising Sun, he hit a lot of these ones on the head. So good job, Todd.
Yes, indeed. And thanks to everyone for helping name that episode and contribute thoughts about the games over in our guild number 2008. All right, well, we're going to wrap this up here in a second.
I have a plug, which I don't usually have. If you check the feeds, not our feed, not the Duke's feed, but if you check Boards Alive's feed or Draft Mechanics feed, there is an episode that will have been posted on Sunday, the day before this Duke's episode drops. Go give it a listen. We can't have it on our feed for reasons, but go give it a listen. It's really interesting, and we recorded it a long time ago, and I think it's funny.
Oh, yeah, that thing. I kind of forgot about that thing.
Yeah, that thing. Yeah, and as of this episode being released, has happened. So, anyway, yeah, it's on the Draft Mechanic podcast feed or the Boards Alive feed. I think it's on both, because they don't have the same Dice Tower network restrictions we do. Relating to language. Bummer.
Real quick, this is Future Sean, because the release of this episode was delayed about a week. It actually, what Alex is referring to, came out on Draft Mechanics feed on April 1st. So go check that out. I'll have links in the show notes. Well, Alex, it feels good to be back in the saddle, so to speak.
Yep. Back in the saddle again.
So that's going to do it for episode 172, which we've once again titled Settlers of Japan. Thanks again to Ziggy for helping with that title suggestion. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Duke you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on March 29th, 2018. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com, and for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Taste of Minstrel Games, Arcane Wonders, and Game Toppers. You can find TMG's titles at PlayTMG.com, Arcane Wonders over at ArcaneWonders.com, and learn more about Game Toppers at GameToppersLLC.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on!